Marina sat in her tiny kitchen, the faint sound of the clock ticking louder in the silence of her apartment. Her tea sat untouched on the table, growing colder with every passing minute. The familiar knot in her stomach was back, a mix of guilt, longing, and helplessness. It had been a year since that fateful night when her boundaries crumbled under the weight of loneliness and drunken vulnerability. Sergei. His name brought a mix of emotions: desire, guilt, frustration, and anger. She never wanted this, not consciously. When she first moved into the neighborhood, her world was small and manageable. She had left behind a toxic 9-year relationship where betrayal had carved deep scars into her soul. She had vowed to herself that she would never entertain the idea of another man who couldn't give her his all. And then Sergei entered her life. She still remembered the way he smiled at her from across the yard, his easy charm and warm laugh cutting through her guarded exterior. They were part of a small group of neighbors who occasionally gathered to drink and chat in the courtyard. Sergei was married. Everyone knew it. His wife, Alina, was well-liked in the neighborhood. She was cheerful, friendly, and oblivious to what had been brewing beneath the surface. Marina had noticed Sergei's attention almost immediately, the lingering glances, the subtle compliments. She brushed it off at first, telling herself it was innocent. But as the weeks passed, those stolen moments began to feel intoxicating. She didn't want to admit it, but she felt seen in a way she hadn't for years. And then came the night that changed everything. It had been a warm summer evening, the kind where the air buzzed with laughter and music. Wine flowed freely, and the group of neighbors ended the night in Marina's apartment. When everyone else left, Sergei stayed. It was the first time they had been alone. She tried to set boundaries, to remind him he was married, but the words felt weak even as she said them. By morning, everything had changed. At first, she tried to convince herself it was a one-time mistake, but Sergei kept coming back. He said all the right things, made her feel special in ways she hadn't felt in years. She knew it was wrong, every fiber of her being screamed it, but her heart refused to listen. Now, a year later, she was trapped in a cycle she couldn't escape. Sergei wasn't going to leave his wife, and Marina wasn't brave enough to walk away. "Sorry, Marina," he had said so many times. "I can't leave Alina. She's my family. But you mean so much to me. I can't stay away from you." The words were both a comfort and a curse. Marina wanted to believe she was special to him, that she wasn't just some side affair. But deep down, she knew the truth. If she were truly special, he wouldn't be going home to his wife every night. She sipped her tea, the bitterness matching the ache in her chest. She had lost herself in this love, if she could even call it that. The worst part wasn't the lies she told Sergei's wife or the neighbors' knowing looks. It was the lies she told herself. That he would one day choose her. That she was enough. That this was love. The first time Marina felt the weight of their secret unraveling was at the neighborhood barbecue. The courtyard was filled with the smell of grilled meat, the sound of clinking glasses, and children laughing as they played tag. Marina had planned to skip the event entirely, but Sergei had insisted she come. "It'll look suspicious if you're not there," he had said. So she went, dressed in her favorite sundress, her hair loose and wavy. She had become an expert at masking her emotions, smiling through the ache in her chest whenever she saw Sergei and Alina together. But that day something felt different. Alina, usually bubbly and cheerful, seemed quiet. Her laughter didn't ring as brightly, and she kept glancing at Sergei with an expression Marina couldn't quite place. "Marina," Alina called, waving her over to the picnic table. Marina's heart skipped a beat as she approached, forcing a smile onto her face. "How are you doing?" Alina asked, her tone warm but probing. "Good, just busy with work," Marina replied, her voice steady. For a moment, Alina simply looked at her, her gaze lingering a little too long. Marina felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. Did she know? Was this just polite conversation, or was it something more? As the day went on, Marina couldn't shake the feeling that Alina was watching her, studying her. She tried to stay close to the other neighbors, avoiding any one-on-one moments with Sergei. But when their eyes did meet across the courtyard, She saw the same tension mirrored in his expression. Later that night, Sergei called her. "Did she say anything to you?" he asked, his voice tight with worry. "No, but I think she suspects something," Marina replied, her stomach churning. "We have to be more careful," Sergei said. "I can't risk her finding out." Marina bit her lip, holding back the words she wanted to say. Why not? Why couldn't he just be honest with his wife? Why couldn't he choose her? But she already knew the answer. Marina's breaking point came on a cold November evening. She had been waiting all day for Sergei to call, but her phone remained silent. When he finally texted, the message was short and clipped. "Can't come tonight. Sorry." She stared at the screen, her hands trembling with frustration. She had spent the entire day preparing, cooking his favorite meal, setting the table, putting on the red dress he once said he loved. And now, just like that, he was canceling. She didn't respond. Instead, she grabbed her coat and headed outside, the cold air biting at her skin. She needed to clear her head, to escape the suffocating emptiness of her apartment. As she walked through the neighborhood, her feet led her to Sergei's building. She knew it was a bad idea, but she couldn't stop herself. She needed to see him, to confront him. When she reached his apartment, she saw the lights on through the window. For a moment, she stood there, her heart pounding. And then she saw them, Sergei and Alina, sitting together on the couch. Alina was laughing, her head resting on Sergei's shoulder. He was holding her hand, his expression soft and tender. Marina felt like the ground had been ripped out from under her. How could he look at Alina like that after everything he had said to her? She turned and walked away, tears streaming down her face. In the days that followed, Marina tried to distance herself from Sergei. She ignored his calls, deleted his messages, and avoided the courtyard. But he wouldn't let her go so easily. "Marina, we need to talk," he said one evening, showing up uninvited at her door. "There's nothing to talk about," she replied, her voice cold. "I care about you," he said, stepping closer. "You mean so much to me." "Do I?" Marina snapped, her voice rising. "Because when I saw you with your wife, it didn't look like I meant anything to you." Sergei's face fell. "It's not that simple." "Stop," Marina interrupted, holding up a hand. "I've spent a year waiting for you to choose me, but you never will. I deserve better than this. Better than being someone's secret." For the first time, she saw a flicker of guilt in his eyes. "You're right," he said quietly. "You deserve better." And then he left. Months passed, and the pain of losing Sergei began to fade. Marina focused on rebuilding her life, reconnecting with old friends, and rediscovering the parts of herself she had lost in the chaos. One sunny afternoon, as she walked through the park, she spotted a familiar face, Alina. For a moment, Marina considered turning around, but something stopped her. She approached Alina cautiously, her heart pounding. "Hi," she said, her voice tentative. Alina looked up, surprised. "Marina." "Hi." There was an awkward pause before Alina spoke again. "I know," she said softly. "About you and Sergei. I've known for a while." Marina's breath caught in her throat. "I stayed because I thought he would change," Alina continued, her voice tinged with sadness. "But I've realized I deserve better too." Marina didn't know what to say. For so long, she had seen Alina as the enemy, but now she realized they were both victims of the same man. "I'm sorry," Marina said, her voice trembling. "I never wanted to hurt you." Alina gave her a small, sad smile. "I know." In that moment, Marina felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time, she was free, from Sergei, from guilt, from the cycle of pain that had consumed her life. She walked away from the park with a lightness in her step, ready to start a new chapter. One where she was the priority, not the afterthought. One where she finally chose herself. Marina walked home that day feeling lighter than she had in years. She had faced Alina, the one person she had feared encountering, and survived. But more than that, the exchange had given her clarity. For the first time, she saw Sergei for what he truly was. a man unable to take responsibility for his actions, incapable of giving her or Alina the love they deserved. But freedom was a strange feeling, one she hadn't expected to carry such weight. As much as she was relieved to leave Sergei behind, she also felt an ache of loneliness she couldn't ignore. The relationship, toxic as it was, had filled a void in her life, and now that void was back, larger than ever. She spent her evenings trying to rebuild her routine. Long walks in the park replaced the nights she used to wait for Sergei's calls. She picked up painting again, an old hobby she had abandoned years ago. It was soothing to lose herself in the swirls of color and texture, her brush moving rhythmically over the canvas. Still, there were moments when her resolve faltered. One rainy evening, as she sat in her living room watching the storm outside, her phone buzzed. Her heart leapt, hoping against hope that it was Sergei. But when she looked, it was just a message from her mother asking how she was doing. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she sat there staring at the screen, her emotions a tangled mess. She wanted to move on, to let go of the life she had shared with Sergei, but part of her still clung to the what-ifs. What if he truly changed? What if he finally realized he couldn't live without her? It was then that she decided to delete his number. She scrolled through her contacts, her finger hovering over his name. Taking a deep breath, she pressed delete, feeling a surge of both loss and relief as his name disappeared from her phone. This was it. The first real step toward freedom. Over the next few months, Marina poured herself into self-improvement. She started attending a yoga class at a local studio, finding peace in the stretches and breathing exercises. It became her sanctuary, a place where she could let go of her thoughts and focus solely on herself. Her work also became a source of pride. She took on new projects, impressing her boss with her dedication and creativity. For the first time in years, she felt like she was thriving, not because of someone else, but because of her own efforts. One afternoon, as she was leaving the office, she bumped into a man in the elevator. Literally. She had been scrolling through emails on her phone and hadn't noticed him step in. "Sorry," she said, looking up and meeting his eyes. He smiled, brushing it off. No harm done. His name was Alex, and he worked in the same building but for a different company. Over the next few weeks, they began running into each other more often. At the coffee shop downstairs, in the parking garage, in the elevator. Each time, their conversations grew longer, more comfortable. One day, Alex asked her to lunch. Marina hesitated at first, unsure if she was ready to open herself up to someone new. But something about his easy smile and genuine interest in her life made her say yes. The lunch was simple, a small cafe a few blocks away, but it was the most relaxed Marina had felt in a long time. Alex was funny, attentive, and refreshingly honest. When she mentioned her love for painting, his eyes lit up. "You have to show me your work sometime," he said. Marina smiled, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in years. As Marina's connection with Alex deepened, she found herself thinking less and less about Sergei. But life has a way of testing even the strongest resolve. One evening, as she walked through her neighborhood, she saw Sergei in the distance. He was sitting on a bench in the courtyard, his head bowed and his shoulders slumped. He looked smaller somehow, as if the weight of his double life had finally caught up with him. Marina froze, unsure of what to do. Part of her wanted to turn and walk away, but another part, the part that still cared for him despite everything, wanted to check on him. Against her better judgment, she approached him. "Sergei," she said softly. He looked up, his eyes tired and filled with something she couldn't quite place. Regret. Sadness. "Marina," he said, his voice heavy. "I didn't think I'd see you again." She sat down beside him, keeping a safe distance. "What are you doing here?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Alina left me. She found out everything." Marina's heart clenched, but not for the reasons she expected. She didn't feel pity for him, she felt anger. Anger that it had taken losing everything for him to realize the damage he had caused. "I'm sorry," he said, turning to her. "For everything. I never meant to hurt you." Marina shook her head. "You didn't just hurt me, Sergei. You hurt Alina. You hurt yourself. And for what? To live a life of lies. He looked away, his jaw tightening. I was a fool. I thought I could have it all. Marina stood, her voice steady. You can't fix the past, Sergei. But you can choose to be better moving forward. For yourself, and for Alina. As she walked away, she felt a strange sense of closure. For the first time, she truly believed she was free. Alex and Marina's relationship blossomed slowly but surely. He was patient with her, understanding that she was still healing. Their dates were simple yet meaningful. Picnics in the park, cooking dinner together, quiet evenings spent talking about their hopes and dreams. One night, as they sat on Marina's balcony watching the sunset, Alex turned to her with a thoughtful expression. Can I ask you something? He said. Of course, Marina replied, her heart fluttering. Why me? He asked. What made you say yes to lunch that day? Marina thought for a moment, a soft smile playing on her lips. Because you saw me, she said. Not as someone's secret, or someone's mistake. Just me. Alex reached for her hand, his touch warm and steady. That's all I've ever wanted to do. Marina felt a lump in her throat, but it wasn't sadness, it was gratitude. For the first time, she was in a relationship built on honesty, respect, and mutual care. Months turned into a year, and Marina found herself thriving in every aspect of her life. Her paintings were gaining recognition at local galleries, her career was flourishing, and her relationship with Alex was stronger than ever. One evening, as they strolled through the park, Alex suddenly stopped. What is it? Marina asked, looking up at him. He smiled, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small velvet box. Marina's breath caught as he got down on one knee. Marina, he said, his voice steady and full of love. You've taught me what it means to truly care for someone, to see them for who they are. I want to spend the rest of my life seeing you, supporting you, and loving you. Will you marry me? Tears filled Marina's eyes as she nodded, her heart bursting with joy. Yes, she whispered. As Alex slipped the ring onto her finger, Marina realized something profound. She had spent so long settling for less, thinking she didn't deserve more. But now, standing beside a man who truly valued her, she knew the truth. She deserved this happiness. She deserved this love. And for the first time in years, she felt whole.